All right, so welcome to another deep dive. You ready to get into it?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Awesome. Today, we're tackling something that, well, I mean, let's be real, it affects all of us, right? The American economy.
Yeah, for sure.
We're diving into this article, How Sound Money Will Fix America. And it's making a pretty bold claim, like suggesting that the real issue facing America, it isn't political, but our monetary system,
Right.
our money itself. It's a pretty wild idea.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting take. And what's even more interesting is the solution that it proposes, Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, huh? Okay, so let's break this down. The article, it starts off with this analogy, right? Comparing printing money to alcoholism.
Yeah, like it feels good at first, the stimulus, all the spending, but just like overdoing it with anything, the long-term consequences, well, they can be pretty devastating.
Okay, so debt is a big problem. We all know that. But how does this unsound money thing, that's what the article calls it, how does that actually impact me like in my everyday life?
So imagine this system where the rules they're kind of tilted, right? The article, it calls it a two-tiered financial system. And basically it's saying that the wealthy, they can actually benefit from inflation. Their assets, they go up in value, they can borrow cheaply. But for the rest of us, our costs, they just keep rising. Wages, they stay the same. And savings, they lose value. Have you ever felt like, I don't know, like you're working harder and harder, but you're just falling behind?
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't?
Right. So this is kind of the article's explanation for that feeling.
Wow. Okay, that's a much clearer picture than just saying two-tiered system?
Yeah,
Because it does make you feel like the system's kind of rigged.
exactly. Yeah, and that's exactly what it does. It erodes trust. It creates division. And that's where the author's book comes in. What happened to America and how sound money will fix it?
Okay.
And he argues that America's decline, it's directly tied to abandoning sound money. And he says this issue, it goes way beyond our usual political divides. Left versus right. This is something bigger.
Hmm. Now, I'll admit, when I hear economics book, I kind of brace myself for, a dry read.
Yeah.
But the article mentioned this one's meant for like everyday people, not just economists, right? And get this, it has a bright orange cover. Any guesses why that might be significant?
I'm sure you can connect the dots there.
Maybe.
The orange is, well, it's a nod to Bitcoin, which the author advocates for. But before we get to that, the book, it takes us on this historical journey, right? Starting with America's founding principles, which were rooted in sound money.
Right.
Then it goes into this pivotal moment, the Nixon shock of 1971.
Okay.
This is when the U.S. left the gold standard. And the author, he calls this move, and I quote, galactically stupid.
Galactically stupid. Wow. Strong words. Okay, so dumping the gold standard was a big deal, but why? What happened because of that, and how does it affect us now?
Okay, so think of it like this. Imagine tying the value of the dollar to something real and finite, right, like gold. That puts a limit on how much money can be printed. But once that link is broken, the potential for excessive printing, it explodes. And the article argues that, well, that's exactly what led to the runaway inflation and the instability that we've been seeing ever since.
So basically, we traded stability for the ability to just print more money whenever we wanted.
Pretty much, yeah.
Sounds kind of like a deal with the devil, doesn't it?
Yeah, and to make matters worse, the article brings up Milton Friedman's inflation theory. Friedman argued that once inflation takes hold, you need to keep increasing it just to maintain the illusion of prosperity. Like, it's like a drug. You need bigger and bigger doses to get this effect.
Ouch. So instead of addressing the root causes, we just keep printing more money, which actually makes the problem worse in the long run.
Yeah, that's the idea.
That's a scary thought.
It is. But remember, the author doesn't just point out the problem. He offers a solution. And that's where Bitcoin enters the picture.
Okay, so we've got this problem of unsound money leading to, inflation, instability, and now we're back to that orange book cover, which you said hints at Bitcoin as a potential solution. Honestly, I'm a bit skeptical. Isn't Bitcoin just this like volatile, speculative thing for like tech bros?
It's true. Bitcoin, it's had its share of volatility, but the article, it goes deeper. It focuses on Bitcoin's underlying principles. First of all, we talked about tying the dollar to gold.
Yeah.
Well, Bitcoin, it has this built-in scarcity. Its supply is mathematically limited, meaning no one, not even governments, can just create more out of thin air.
So Bitcoin is like digital gold.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
That's an interesting way to think about it. But how does that fix the problems we've been, talking about? Like, how does that help?
Well, the article argues that Bitcoin, it's this potential return to sound money principles. By taking control away from central banks and politicians, it aims to create a system that's resistant to the manipulations that cause inflation and instability. It's about separating money and state.
Hold on, separating money and state, that sounds pretty radical, doesn't it? Doesn't the government need to be involved to, like, regulate things, prevent chaos?
That's a common concern. And the article, it addresses it head on. It asks, what if this separation could actually reduce corruption and inefficiency?
Hmm.
Imagine a system where money creation isn't tied to political agendas. Could that lead to more stable and equitable outcomes?
Those are some thought-provoking questions. But let's be real. A lot of people see Bitcoin as this risky, even shady thing. Is this book just for, like, crypto diehards, or can a regular person like me actually understand it?
The author actually wrote the book with skeptics in mind. He understands the preconceived notions, and he aims to address them directly. He wants to show that Bitcoin at its core is about returning to these basic economic principles that benefit everyone, not just a select few.
Okay, that makes sense. But I have to admit, I'm still wrapping my head around all this. It feels very theoretical. Can we bring it back down to earth a bit? Like, how does all this talk about sound money and Bitcoin actually translate to, real world wealth creation?
That's a great point. The article emphasizes that real wealth isn't created by printing money. It's created through work and innovation and investment. It uses this simple example. Imagine a hunger crisis, right? Printing more money, it might feel like a quick fix, but it doesn't magically produce more food.
Right.
The real solution, well, it's growing more food, which it takes effort and resources and time.
That's a powerful analogy. So are you saying that instead of relying on government stimulus and quick fixes, we should be focusing on building a more sustainable and productive economy?
Exactly. And the book, it delves deeper into how these principles can be applied on an individual level. It empowers people to understand the system and make informed financial decisions.
So it's not just about Bitcoin, it's about taking control of your own financial well-being.
Yeah.
That's a message I can get behind. But before we wrap up, I'm curious about the author himself. Like, what led him to write this book?
Well, his journey it's actually quite interesting. He didn't start out as a Bitcoin advocate. In fact, he was a big proponent of gold for years. It was only after, experiencing his own share of financial struggles and deeply studying monetary history that he came to see Bitcoin as a potential solution.
So he's not just some ivory tower academic. He's someone who's been in the trenches and felt the pain of a broken system firsthand.
Yeah.
That makes his perspective even more compelling. Man, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? We talked about the problems with, unsound money and the historical events that got us here, and even dove into, like, Bitcoin as a potential solution. But I think honestly, like, the biggest takeaway for me is that real wealth, it comes from creating value, not just, printing more money.
Yeah, 100%. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really challenges us to rethink our relationship with money itself. Like, what if the solutions to our economic woes, what if they lie outside those traditional political debates we always hear?
Yeah.
What if true change? What if it requires a fundamental shift in how we think about money and its role in society?
That's a pretty radical thought, isn't it? It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, the headlines, the political arguments. But this deep dive it's really made me step back and consider the underlying systems, the systems that are actually at play.
And that's the beauty of exploring these ideas. Even if you don't, agree with everything, it forces you to ask those tough questions and consider different perspectives. Like, for example, could separating money from the state, like the author proposes, could that actually lead to more transparency, more accountability? Or would it create more instability, more risk?
Those are definitely questions worth pondering, and that's what I appreciate about this book. It doesn't shy away from challenging conventional wisdom. It encourages us to think critically and question the assumptions that we often just take for granted.
Exactly. Whether you ultimately embrace Bitcoin or not, understanding its underlying principles and the broader conversation around sound money, well, it's crucial for navigating the complexities of our economic future.
It's like learning a new language, right? You might not become fluent, but even a basic understanding, it can open up a whole new world of possibilities. And who knows, it might just change the way you think about money forever.
Yeah. And if this deep dive has, sparked your curiosity, I highly, highly recommend checking out the book, What Happened to America and How Sound Money Will Fix It. It's a thought-provoking read. It challenges us to reconsider the foundations of our financial system and explore those potential paths, towards a more stable and equitable future.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring and keep asking those tough questions.